Welcome everyone to a brand new Pokemon Go episode. Today it is all about Generation 2 Pokemon coming to Pokemon Go and which candies you guys should be saving to make sure you're fully prepped for the new Pokemon being added into the game. And if you watch this video, you will thank me when the Pokemon finally come around, because trust me, you'll be doing all the evolutions a lot quicker than all of your friends that were not prepared. So at the moment, there's only the original 151 Pokemon within Pokemon Go. And even then, some of the legendary Pokemon aren't even available yet. But Niantic, the developers of Pokemon Go, have already said that they're looking into introducing new Pokemon, which includes a Generation 2 Pokemon, into the app at a point in the very near future. My prediction would be that, fingers crossed, we'll be getting Generation 2 Pokemon closer to the Christmas period, to the winter period this year. So that means that about 6 months after release, we'll be getting Generation 2 added to the game. I am so excited for this. One of the first Pokemon games I played was Pokemon Gold, and Pokemon Gold included all the gym badges from the original Red, Blue and Yellow, and then also added in an additional 8 gym badges just to make it a huge game, and some of my favorite Pokemon fall into Generation 2 when it comes to the Pokemon series. Now, Pokemon love to do remakes of games, and Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, in my opinion, is one of the best remade Pokemon games ever. Claire had never played it until recently, so I bought her a DS, I bought her Soul Silver, I played through Heart Gold, and it was one of the most fun Pokemon experiences ever. And Gen 2 contains some of my favorite Pokemon, including Tyranitar, an awesome evolution chain from Generation 2. We've got the Espeon Eevee Evolution as well, which is absolutely amazing. Generation 2 contains 100 new additions to the Pokemon family. So now you guys know exactly what Gen 2 is and what to expect. So let's jump into how you can prepare for Generation 2 by kicking it off with baby Pokemon. The ability to breed Pokemon, get eggs, and hatch new Pokemon was introduced into Generation 2. And a lot of baby Pokemon were added in that evolve into Pokemon from Generation 1. Now, I don't necessarily think you need to save candies for any of this, but at least have 2 of these Pokemon available, because they have talked about the addition of bringing in breeding as a feature into Pokemon Go at some point in the near future. So at least you guys know which Pokemon to keep hold of to get these baby Pokemon when Generation 2 comes around. So first off is Pichu. This is a pre-evolution of Pikachu. So I've got myself a Pikachu here, a 92% IV Pikachu, and I've got a few more Pikachus, so I'm definitely ready for this breeding. We also have Clefairy, so you will need 2 Clefairies. I'm only sitting on 2 right now, a 97% IV Clefairy and just a 15 CP Clefairy. So I'm glad I've got 2 right here, keeping hold of these so I can get the new baby Pokemon Clefairy. Jigglypuff has a pre-evolution in the form of Igglybuff, so make sure you've got 2 Jigglypuffs that you can sit on as well to get another baby Pokemon. Now, believe it or not, Jinx is a pre-evolution in the form of baby Smoochum. Jinx is one of those Pokemon I've never really bothered with or cared too much for. I got them quite early on, but at least I'm sitting on 2 here, and it adds in a cool little evolution chain to the Jinx line. Now, one of the 2 awesome Pokemon in Gen 1 is Electabuzz. Electabuzz is awesome, pretty rare, pretty strong. You can get him from 10km eggs, and he gets a pre-evolution in the form of Elekid, who looks awesome, he looks badass. So hopefully you guys are sitting on 2 Electabuzzes, and assuming these Pokemon are done through breeding, you can get yourself Electakid. And on top of that is Magmar. I think Magmar and Electabuzz are just awesome. Magmar gets the pre-evolution baby Pokemon Magby, and I've got quite a few awesome Magmars here. So 2 great baby Pokemon. Hopefully you've got either a Magmar or an Electabuzz, either through 10k eggs or just found out in the wild, because they can be quite rare because you need those baby Pokemon for Gen 2. Now, this is one of the weirder baby Pokemon, and I'm not sure how it's going to be done. It's called Tyrogue, and it's basically a pre-evolution of both Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan, and also a Pokemon called Hitmontop. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Now, I'm not too sure if this can be bred between both a Hitmonlee and a Hitmonchan, but I only have 1 Hitmonlee and 1 Hitmonchan. The first Hitmonchan I caught in LA last week, so I'm just going to keep hold of both of these guys and try and get a second version of both of them. But Tyrogue, not sure how it's going to work or how it's going to be done. It's going to be a very interesting baby Pokemon. But keep that in mind and make sure you've got some of the Hitmon family stored away. So those are all the baby Pokemon that are added into Generation 2. I reckon breeding will probably cost some candies as well. But just make sure you've got 2 of each of those Pokemon. Store up those candies. And I'll keep you guys updated as we find out more about breeding and how it's going to be implemented into Pokemon Go. So now let's move on to Pokemon that you should be keeping the candies for because they have an additional evolution in Generation 2. Kicking it off with Zubat, which evolves all the way up into a Golbat, and then gets the additional evolution in Generation 2 called Crobat. Now, in the video games, it's evolved from a Golbat with high friendship, but obviously there isn't anything quite like that implemented in Pokemon Go. So the likelihood is, if it costs around 50 candies to go from Zubat to Golbat, you're probably going to be looking at about 100 candies to go from a Golbat all the way up to a Crobat. Now, I haven't been bothering capturing Zubats for a while because they're hard to capture, they're high up in the air, they're a pain. But as of recent, as soon as I realized I should be getting on this, I've been trying to build up my Zubat candies again because it's going to prepare me really well for Gen 2, so make sure you're doing the same. Now, in Generation 1, as you guys know, Oddish is a 3-stage evolution. It starts off as Oddish, goes up to Gloom, and I don't quite have it yet, but it goes up to Vileplume for another 100 candies. Now, actually in Generation 2 in Pokemon, you can actually evolve a Gloom rather into a Vileplume into a Blossom. Now, this is done through the use of a Sunstone. Now, there aren't any such items at the moment within Pokemon Go, but I feel like with all these additional evolutions we're about to go through with you guys, items are definitely going to have to be added in some form, most likely through the drops in Pokestops to allow for these different evolutions. Now, I'm sitting on 100 candies, but I still want to do the Vileplume evolution, so I will probably have to get myself another 100 candies if I want to evolve a Gloom into a different direction and send it off into the Blossom Generation 2 Pokemon. Now, as I said, with that Gloom needing a Sunstone, there's many more Pokemon that need additional items that aren't in the game at the moment. One of them being this evolution right here. So as we know, we can get Poliwag, we can turn it all the way up into a Poliwhirl, and then turn it all the way up into a Poliwrath, which I've done so already. However, if we go back to the Poliwhirl evolution, they add in an evolution into Gen 2 called Politoed, which can go from a Poliwhirl while being traded with a King's Rock being held. So assuming they add in King's Rock as an item into the game, or maybe you simply just get an option into which direction you evolve a Pokemon, the Poliwhirl will evolve into this brand new Politoed evolution, which I also think will need 100 candies. So I've got 73 here, I'm well on my way to being able to do that, but make sure you're grabbing as many of those Poliwags as possible to get ready. So that King's Rock that's needed in the Pokemon games to evolve a Poliwhirl into a Politoed is also needed for another evolution, and this is to turn the Slowpoke into a Slow King. It's an awesome evolution. It means that you can turn it into something completely different, rather than, as you can see here, I believe it's actually a shoulder which is attached onto its tail. It attaches onto its head. It looks pretty crazy. Now, I think this is going to need maybe 75 candies. I know at the moment nothing costs 75, but I think jumping all the way up to 100 on an evolution that at the moment only costs 50 to go to a Slowbro is a little bit expensive, but it means that it's sort of in the middle ground, you know what I mean? So I don't quite have enough candies right now. 29 is a little bit low, so I'm going to keep on grinding up the Slowpokes. But the Slow King is a really cool evolution, and make sure you're keeping hold of these candies. Now, these two evolutions are awesome. They are Eevee Evolutions. As you guys know, there's loads of Eevee Evolutions if you look across all of the generation of Pokemon games. In Pokemon Go, we only have, as you can see on screen here, Vaporeon, Jolteon, and Flareon. But with the addition of Generation 2, they also add in Espeon and Umbreon. Espeon is one of my favorite Eevee evolutions. So strong, so quick, absolutely amazing. Now, in the Pokemon games, you need to get an Eevee up to full happiness, which means just walking around with it in your party, giving it haircuts, things like that you can do in-game, and then leveling it up during daytime to get the Espeon, or during nighttime to get the Umbreon. Now, at the moment, there's no way of gauging happiness in Pokemon Go, so the only determining factor here in Pokemon Go is whether or not it's daytime or nighttime. Now, some of you guys may have picked up on the fact that around 7 PM in-app time, it'll go from daytime to nighttime. So obviously, there is a day and there is a nighttime built into the app, but at the moment, there's no way of gauging a happiness level for any Pokemon in the game. So we know that we can choose whether or not it's night or daytime, which is fantastic, but some additional element will have to be added into the Pokemon game to be able to choose your Espeon or Umbreon evolution. Now, I know all of the evolutions currently cost 25 candies, so I think it only makes sense to stick to that 25 candy rule for Eevee and make the Espeon and Umbreon evolutions at 25 each too. And with the ability to choose day or nighttime quite easily, we're just waiting for that final element, be it through happiness or through something else that I add into the game that means we can get the Umbreon and Espeon Evolutions. I'm sitting here waiting to evolve this badass Eevee. I only have 14 candies, so I need to get a lot more Eevee candies before I can even get anything else new for Generation 2. But sit tight, hold on to those Eevees, because 2 more Eevee Evolutions are coming in Gen 2, and they're awesome. Oh my god. So, these 2 evolutions are some of the most exciting evolutions, in my opinion, from Generation 2. In the original Pokemon games in Gold and Silver, you were given a new item called a Metal Coat, and I'm pretty sure you were only given 1 per game. There were 2 evolutions that involved the Metal Coat in Pokemon Gold and Silver. The first one is Onyx. As you can see, don't ask me how, I've got 109 Onyx candies. I've just got a lot of Onyx from eggs, and of course a decent amount in the wild as well. And in the Pokemon games, if you had an Onyx holding a Metal Coat and you traded it, it had turned into the badass, the amazing, the beautiful Steelix. Now, obviously at the moment, I've been talking about these additional items. We've had the King's Rock, we've had a Sunstone, we've now got Metal Coat. They're going to have to implement these things somehow if we want to get these evolutions added into the game. Now, I think 100 candies to evolve an Onyx into a Steelix is very steep. So despite the fact I have 100 candies, I'm going to say that the evolution from an Onyx to a Steelix will probably be closer to 50 candies. Whether or not you'll need that Metal Coat, we'll have to find out. But I did say there are 2 Pokemon that use this evolution, so let's talk about the second one as well. That's right, guys, it's none other than Cypher himself. I have a 91% IV Cypher that I hatched from an egg. He's an absolute badass. And again, if holding the Metal Coat he was traded in the original Pokemon games, he would turn into a Sizzle. 2 just awesome Pokemon, and the decision I had to make between a Steelix and a Sizzle was always so hard. Back in the day, I played Gold so many times over, as in like I complete all 16 badges, defeat the Elite Four, go and take on Red on top of the mountains, and then restart the game. I got both Sizzle and Steelix quite a few times. So for me, both the Sizzle and Steelix evolutions are just so cool. And I'm only sitting on 27 Cypher candies at the moment. I don't see very many in the wild at all, to be honest with you. They're even rarer than Onyxes, I find. But make sure you're building up these candies, because you're definitely going to need some. They're 2 rare Pokemon, but they have 2 awesome evolutions in Gen 2, so look forward to them. So this one's a big one. You're going to need a lot of candies, I'm pretty sure. As we know, in Gen 1, Horsey evolves into Seadra using 50 candies. And there's actually an additional 3rd evolution in Gen 2, and this is for Kingdra. Now, in the games, again, you need to trade it. It had to hold the Dragon Scale, so another item thrown in there. Again, we're going to have to wait and find out and see what they do with items for these evolutions. But it's pretty easy to say that if it's going to cost 50 candies to get a Horsey to a Seadra, it's almost definitely going to cost you around 100 candies to get a Seadra all the way up to a Kingdra. I'm sitting at only 34 candies. I've done the Seadra evolution before, and I think I've caught one in the wild too. So I need to get on my grind for these Horsies right here. So make sure you're doing exactly the same. Water areas are great for these kind of Pokemon because you're going to want Kingdra. Now guys, these final evolutions for Gen 2 are going to be tough. For sure they're going to be tough. It doesn't get much tougher than this. I was lucky enough to get a Porygon out in the wild from an incense in London. In fact, I don't think I've ever shown that clip in a video before, and I apologize for that. But regardless, the one I caught was 900 CP, 86 IV, which for a wild Pokemon is really impressive. But added into Gen 2 is Porygon 2. This was evolved if you were holding the upgrade item and traded it to somebody else. So again, another item involved, another trading feature involved. But I think because this Pokemon is rare, Porygon is rare, I put it like high up in my list of rare Pokemon in Pokemon Go. I don't think it's going to cost any more than 50 candies, maybe even as low as 25, to evolve it into Porygon 2. I'm definitely going to struggle to evolve this guy. I need to hatch some from eggs. I need to go and find some out in the wild. And you guys are probably similar. If you know of any nests in the UK, please let me know. But Porygon 2 is coming along, so look out for it because it's a really cool evolution. So when I mentioned baby Pokemon earlier on in the video, I mentioned Tyro could turn into Hitmonlee or Hitmonchan, or a 3rd evolution introduced into Gen 2 called Hitmontop. Now, the way that Tyrogue evolves in the games is all to do with how the attack and defense stats of its Pokemon is balanced out. And to get a Hitmontop, the attack and defense of the Tyrogue had to be equal. So we know there's IVs in the game, which has hidden attack, defense, and stamina stats. So if they decide to use the same sort of statistics to evolve the Tyrogue in Pokemon Go, it could be done. If we go to the appraisal feature, for example, on this Hitmonlee, I've never actually done this before. It's average, okay. We know its best attribute is defense, and that's it. Its defense is better than its attack, better than its stamina. So we could use the appraisal feature and the ID calculator I've got over on PokeFind as well to work out what Tyrogue will evolve into to get that Hitmon top. So it's an interesting one. Again, we're not 100% sure how it's going to be implemented. But build up your Hitmonlee candies, build up your Hitmonchan candies, and get ready for Hitmon top. Now the final, and I know I keep banging on about how much I love Gen 2 Pokemon, but I adore Blissey. Blissey evolves into Chancy. Chancy was always so rare to get. You had to go in the Safari Zone, spend hours and hours searching for it. And when I got it, I would always get so hyped. I just loved grinding out for a Chancy. Now I've got an 88 IV Chancy, which I hatched from a 10k egg a little while ago now. In the video games, we needed to have Chancy with a really high friendship level, and then it leveled up and it would turn into Blissey. And as I said, at the moment, there's no way of calculating friendship levels. So I think you simply have to get around 50 candies from a Chancy to evolve it into the awesome Blissey. Blissey has so much HP, is a tank of a Pokemon, and is such an awesome addition to Gen 2. And that is the final Pokemon that you should be saving your candies for. So if you've hatched any Chancies and you've gotten a little bit annoyed, don't worry, those candies can go to good use when Gen 2 comes around. Personally, never seen a Chansey in the wild. Player caught one in LA, but I was out in a different place, so I completely missed it. So keep hold of this. Although it may not be the best Pokemon in the world at the moment, it can evolve, and it's awesome. I never thought I'd see the day when an Electabuzz appears nearby. Somebody's been listening to my Gen 2 Pokemon list and is excited for Electrokid. But guys, those are all the Pokemon added into Gen 2 that link back into Gen 1 that you should be prepared for. And hopefully you found this video really informative and really interesting. There's so many Pokemon in Gen 2 that get me so hyped for them adding it in that I haven't even mentioned in this video, like Tyranitar. It's absolutely awesome. So I'm going to keep you guys updated on A, breeding and how that's going to work. B, the additional items and friendship levels that I talked about that we're using in the video game to evolve a lot of a Pokemon into a Gen 2 Pokemon, and how that's going to be implemented into Pokemon Go. And then of course finally, just when Gen 2 are going to be coming out. My bet is closer to sort of November, December time, getting close to that 6-month mark of the game being out. So I'll keep you guys updated on all of those things. So thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. Loads more Pokemon Going coming soon. Do not worry. So thank you so much for watching. You guys are amazing. I am so hyped for Gen 2. Hopefully you guys are too. And I'll see you guys very soon on another Pokemon Go episode.